Welcome to the DRS Zone. We are absolutely pumped to have you with us today. Just a quick heads up for you right at the top. This segment is part of our news coverage of recent F1 events.
Oh, and what an event it was. We are coming in incredibly hot today.
Literally. If you have been following the start of this 2026 Formula One season, you already know the Australian Grand Prix left us with just a massive, massive amount of data to process.
Huge amount.
And look, you have probably seen the official broadcast, right? The shiny television highlights, the meticulously choreographed podium celebrations today. We are completely ignoring all of that.
Throwing it completely out the window.
Yeah.
We are focusing entirely on the periphery today. Because, you know, the main cameras, they capture the glamour, they capture the speed. But the periphery, that is where the actual raw story of a race weekend unfolds.
Exactly. So our insights today come from a brilliant, highly detailed breakdown from our source material, and they focus strictly on the unseen moments, the absolute chaos that falls right through the cracks of the glossy television coverage.
The stuff the PR teams desperately wish we wouldn't see.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive into the DRS zone is to uncover the chaotic, the hilarious, and the deeply, deeply human reality of the F1 paddock.
We are talking bizarre physical injuries.
Total operational meltdowns.
Oh, yeah. And the increasingly strange influx of VIP influencers who, quite frankly, might not even know what sport they are looking at.
It is wild. It presents this fascinating contrast for anyone studying modern sports. You know, you have the most technologically advanced, precision-engineered athletic competition in the entire world.
Hundreds of millions of dollars invested.
Right, and yet right beneath that shiny carbon fiber surface, it operates as this chaotic theater of human error. It's raw emotion and strange coincidences.
It's so raw. So where do we start?
Okay, let's unpack this by starting with a tradition that always seems to have at least one bizarre hiccup. The 2026 driver family photo.
Oh, man. The family photo.
You know the setup. Every driver, the top executives, all congregating on the starting grid before the season really kicks into high gear.
Just a classic PR moment.
Literally. The photographers just need 5 seconds. 5 seconds of 20 highly paid professionals looking at the camera. But if you zoom in on this year's photo...
Which our source material absolutely did.
Yes. Liam Lawson and Arvid Lindblad are staring off into a completely different dimension. They completely missed the cue.
It is hilarious. You have hundreds of millions of dollars in driver salaries, surrounded by the absolute best public relations teams on the planet, and coordinating eye lines for 5 seconds remains an impossible logistical hurdle.
Impossible. But, okay, while the internet was busy memeing Lawson and Lindblad, there was a much, much more serious, hidden story unfolding right there on the grid, before the camera even flashed.
Yeah, this is where it gets intense.
I noticed this detail in the breakdown, and it is easily one of the most intriguing moments of the entire weekend. It involves Fernando Alonso going full, and I mean full, worried grandma mode on Max Verstappen.
Just zeroing in on him.
The background cameras caught Fernando grabbing Max's left hand. He leans in close, and he's intensely inspecting Max's wrist, clearly asking if he was injured.
And Max, of course, just gives this dismissive, stiff little wave.
Right, just playing it off for the crowd, like, oh, I'm fine, nothing to see here.
Classic Max. But knowing what happened earlier in the weekend, he was absolutely masking something.
So break this down for us. What did the frame-by-frame analysis of that Q3 incident actually show? Because the live feed missed it.
Okay, what's fascinating here is the sheer brutal violence of the physics involved. The live broadcast completely failed to convey this. During qualifying, specifically in that high-stakes final Q3 shootout, where these guys are pushing the absolute limits of track adhesion.
That edge of grip.
Exactly. Max had a significant impact with the barrier. Now, the broadcast showed the car hitting the wall, standard crash, right? But when the analyst went frame by frame on the onboard camera, the reality of the kinetic energy transfer is terrifying.
Terrifying is the word.
When the front wheels hit that barrier, the steering column violently snaps. The force required to do that actually catapults Max's left hand completely off the specialized grip.
Rips it right off the wheel. The breakdown shows his hand literally flying across the width of the cockpit. It strikes the inside of the side pod with incredible force, and the momentum carries it upward until it smacks into the opposite rearview mirror.
Which is insane. The amount of kinetic energy required to rip a driver's hand off the wheel, especially when a driver like Verstappen is bracing for an impact and gripping it with everything he has, is just immense.
He's a machine, and even he couldn't hold on.
And then you see his hand just resting there limply against the chassis for this agonizing moment. Watching it at full speed generates a genuine chill. The sheer blunt force trauma of punching carbon fiber at those speeds, it is substantial.
And the source material brings up a very visceral detail about the reality of the open cockpit that I think we fans often forget.
Oh, the gravel analogy.
Yes, we analyze these crashes and we think about the big structural impacts, right? The suspension breaking, the crash structures absorbing the G-forces. But there is also the micro debris.
The stuff flying through the air?
Just think about the gravel traps. Getting hit by flying gravel when you're traveling at 150 miles per hour is essentially like taking a bullet.
It's a projectile.
They referenced a past incident with a Haas driver where a single piece of gravel kicked up, bypassed the aeroscreen, and struck the driver's knuckles while their hands were exposed turning the wheel.
And it caused excruciating pain.
Right. Now add that constant ambient risk to the blunt force trauma of violently punching your own side pod.
Which perfectly contextualizes why Alonso, the most experienced driver on the grid, was so concerned. He knows the physical toll. He knows exactly what that looks like.
He spotted it instantly.
Furthermore, the entire paddock understands the strategic implications here. We are at the very beginning of the 2026 regulatory era. Red Bull is in a fiercely competitive position.
Fighting to establish dominance early.
Exactly. So the absolute last thing their engineering team can afford right now is their star driver nursing a broken hand or a lingering physical hesitation.
They cannot afford a compromised Max.
Max played it cool for the cameras to avoid showing weakness to his rivals, but the telemetry of his own body tells a completely different story.
Unbelievable stuff. Okay, so moving from a team quietly hiding a physical weakness to a team loudly broadcasting an operational one, let's pivot to Aston Martin.
Oh no, here we go.
The source described their Australian Grand Prix weekend atmosphere as an absolute funeral.
A literal funeral.
Nobody was smiling. The morale was visibly entirely depleted. The only time anyone in green looked even remotely engaged was when a random fan stopped Adrian Newey in the paddock to ask for an autograph.
And the visual contrast provided by the TV broadcast on Thursday was just striking. Sure. The cameras caught an individual casually walking into the Aston Martin motorhome carrying a massive celebratory bottle of champagne.
Which is incredibly ironic, because as the weekend unfolded, it became abundantly clear they had absolutely nothing to pop a cork for.
It's nothing at all.
The car severely lacked race pace, the hybrid battery systems were failing intermittently, and then we witnessed the absolute pinnacle of their misery.
Pit stops.
The pit stops.
They were a masterclass in systemic failure. The TV commentators had mentioned that the team was utilizing brand new pit stop equipment, essentially running live tests with new wheel guns and jacks in a high-pressure race environment.
Right, so a casual viewer might assume that a slow stop was due to a mechanical failure with a new pneumatic gun, right?
It would be a logical assumption.
But the breakdown reveals it was not an equipment failure at all. They call Fernando Alonso into the box for a switch to soft tires. The car rolls up to the marks, the mechanics are in position, and the team literally only has the rear tires ready.
Just the rears.
There are 0 front tires in the pit box.
It defies logic at the highest echelon of motorsport. Look, a Formula One pit stop requires choreographed perfection from over 20 individuals. To simply forget half of the required inventory before calling the driver in, that represents a catastrophic breakdown in basic communication.
Catastrophic. And to compound the nightmare, to make it infinitely worse, Lance Stroll is coming down the pit lane right behind Alonso.
The double stack.
They had called a double stack, which, for anyone unfamiliar, is when a team pits both of their cars on the exact same lap, one right after the other. It requires split-second precision to clear the first car before the second one arrives.
And they weren't even prepared to service the first car.
Exactly. Aston Martin wasn't even ready for Alonso, and their second driver was already in the pit lane. It was a total operational collapse.
They were utterly lost. Utterly lost. And you know, that theme of being lost provides a really fascinating segue into the shifting cultural dynamics of the paddock itself, moving beyond just the racing strategy.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. Let's talk about Carlos Sainz and the growing disconnect within the VIP enclosures.
This is a wild story.
Carlos had a miserable qualifying session. He got eliminated in Q1. And for context, Q1 is that frantic first knockout session where all 20 cars are on track fighting for clear air.
Track evolution is peaking.
Right, and even top drivers can get caught out by traffic. Carlos was one of the unfortunate casualties. So the broadcast caught him walking back down the pit lane afterward, and he looked physically disoriented.
Heartbroken.
He paced back and forth, he walked entirely past his own Williams garage, realized he had gone too far, and had to literally turn back around.
It is a profoundly human moment. Anyone who has experienced a highly public, devastating failure at their job can relate to that feeling of your brain just momentarily shutting down basic navigation. You are just numb.
Numb. But the deeper narrative isn't Carlos wandering the pit lane. It revolves around who was waiting inside the team's hospitality area when he finally found it.
Yes, the VIP incident.
According to a story shared on a social media thread by an F1 VIP and events correspondent, there was a surreal interaction in the exclusive Williams VIP area. She witnessed an influencer, an individual invited specifically to be a guest of the team, given the highest level of paddock access, chatting casually with Carlos Sainz.
Okay.
And right in the middle of their conversation, this influencer stops and asks Carlos who he is.
You really have to pause and absorb the absurdity of that scenario.
It's mind-blowing.
Carlos Sainz is a multiple Grand Prix winner. He is one of the most recognizable athletes on the grid. He is standing inside his own team's highly restricted hospitality suite, wearing his official team apparel.
Literally covered in Williams logos.
Covered in them. And an invited guest, someone granted an all-access pass by the team's marketing department, has absolutely no concept of his identity.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a moment, just to look at the other side. Formula One is a multi-billion-dollar business. The teams need corporate sponsors, and sponsors want engagement metrics.
That's the reality of the business.
Right. So don't these influencers, even if they're completely clueless about tire compounds or who won Q1, don't they bring millions of new, younger eyes to the sport? Doesn't that ultimately fund the racing we all want to watch?
I hear you. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, there's a distinct difference between growing a sport and alienating its core reality. Yes, the financial argument is valid on a spreadsheet, but it highlights a growing dissonance in the paddock.
A massive dissonance.
You have this grueling, dangerous reality on the asphalt. Drivers experiencing blunt force trauma, mechanics devastated by operational failures, drivers wandering the pit lane in a haze of professional heartbreak.
Sweating, bleeding, crying.
Exactly. And a few feet away, separated by a glass door, you have a sterilized environment where access is currency. And the guests are more concerned with curating their social media presence than acknowledging the human beings risking their lives outside.
That dissonance is staggering. You think about the hardcore fans listening to us right now who would gladly drain their savings accounts just to stand in that garage and watch the telemetry screens.
Just to smell the tires.
Right, and to see that access handed to someone farming engagement metrics, it feels like a betrayal of the sport's grit. But thankfully, that grit and genuine human connection do still exist if you look closely enough.
They do. They really do.
Let's look at the local hero, Oscar Piastri.
Oh, Piastri. He suffered a remarkably difficult weekend in front of his hometown crowd in Melbourne.
A ton of pressure on him. He had a heavy crash into the wall, which is brutal under any circumstances. But doing it in Australia carries a much heavier emotional weight for him.
You want to perform for your home crowd.
Exactly. And afterward, the cameras caught a painfully awkward interaction. A fan approaches him for a photo, holding up their hand in half of a heart shape, fully expecting Piastri to complete the heart with his own hand.
The TikTok heart trend.
Yeah. And Piastri, clearly emotionally drained, entirely not in the mood for social media antics, just looks at it and offers a stiff thumbs up.
Brutal. It was a brutal rejection, albeit a highly relatable one.
Yeah.
His headspace was clearly focused entirely on the wreckage of his car.
He was in the zone.
And speaking of that wreckage, the source material highlighted a significant technical revelation that emerged from that crash.
Oh, the aero secrets.
Yes. When the front wing was destroyed, it completely exposed the 2026 McLaren's front DRS actuator cables.
Now, for the technical analysts following the sport, why is seeing those specific cables such a massive deal?
Because we are in the inaugural year of the 2026 active aerodynamics regulations.
Right, the new rules.
The cars now have movable aerodynamic parts on both the rear and the front wings to reduce drag on the straights. Every team has been incredibly secretive about how they are mechanically engineering these front wing actuators.
Trying to keep them lightweight.
Lightweight, reliable, and entirely hidden from rival aerodynamicists. Piastri's crash effectively ripped the cover off McLaren's proprietary design. It gave every rival engineer in the pit lane a high-definition look at their internal mechanisms.
It is an absolute goldmine for corporate espionage.
Every engineer at Red Bull and Ferrari was definitely taking screenshots.
100%. But the aftermath of Piastri's crash also showcased a deeply touching human element. As Piastri is walking away from the medical car feeling completely vulnerable, a broadcast cameraman starts tailing him.
Getting aggressively close.
Trying to capture the raw emotion right in his face. Suddenly, A man named James Joy steps right into the frame.
Now, this is important. James Joy is currently a press officer for the Alpine Formula One team.
Not McLaren.
Exactly, not McLaren, which is Piastri's team.
That is a crucial detail. Joy used to work directly with Piastri years ago when Oscar was developing his career within the Alpine Academy system.
They have a history.
The footage shows Joy stepping seamlessly between the lens of the television camera and Piastri. He extends his arm, creating a physical barrier, and quietly walks backward with Oscar, ensuring the camera cannot intrude any further.
It serves as a profound reminder of the paddock's true nature.
It really does.
We consume these manufactured narratives about bitter team principal arguments, the espionage over actuator cables, the multi-million-dollar corporate rivalries. But beneath that corporate veneer, the paddock is essentially a traveling circus.
They are a family.
These people spend 200 days a year traveling the globe together. A press officer wearing the uniform of a rival constructor saw a young man he used to mentor having the worst moment of his professional year. And basic human instinct overrode team affiliations. He protected him.
It gave me chills reading that. It proves that the underlying soul of the sport hasn't been completely swallowed by the corporate machine just yet.
Not yet.
All right, we have covered the crashes, the technical espionage, and the emotional heartbreak. Let's inject some levity, because the deep dive into the source material also uncovered some spectacular comedic moments.
Oh, the Australian Grand Prix rarely disappoints when it comes to pure, unscripted absurdity.
Never. Let's begin with Charles Leclerc. During a tense moment in the practice sessions, he keys his radio. In his thickest, most relaxed French accent, he casually informs his race engineer that his onboard water bottle, which apparently had a highly unconventional shape installed for this race, feels exactly like the mushroom from Mario Kart.
Just deadpan.
Just deadpan. This is like the mushroom of Mario Kart.
The contrast is brilliant. You have a driver analyzing complex telemetry and tire degradation, pulling 5 Gs through a corner, and then casually making a Nintendo reference.
It's incredible. And we also saw some incredible visual comedy over on the Formula 3 podium.
The optics of that podium were absolutely staggering.
So the race was won by Ugo Chukwu, an 18-year-old driving for Campos Racing. He stands a towering 1.90 meters tall. That's about 6'3".
Which is massive for a single-seater racing driver. They're usually so compact.
Massive. And finishing in third place was Tato Kato. The photograph from the podium presentation shows Kato standing on the lower third-place step. But even accounting for the step difference, he's staring straight up into the sky at Ugo with an expression of sheer, unadulterated awe.
He looks like someone trying to comprehend the scale of a redwood tree.
Literally.
It immediately raised questions among the engineers about how Campos manages to package a driver of that height into a junior formula chassis without completely ruining the car's center of gravity.
They must have folded him in there. But okay, my personal favorite mishap of the entire weekend. It involves the highly anticipated historic car exhibition.
Oh, the promised V10.
Yes. The organizers had aggressively promoted this to the fans. They promised to run a 2001 Jaguar Cosworth around the Albert Park circuit.
Now, for anyone who appreciates the history of motorsport, that specific Jaguar is powered by a naturally aspirated V10 engine.
A masterpiece of engineering.
The acoustic signature of an old F1 V10 is legendary. It is a deafening, high-pitched scream that literally vibrates in your chest cavity. It is exactly what the traditionalists dream of hearing.
The fans packed the grandstand specifically for that sensory experience. And what happened? The Jaguar completely broke down before it even made it out of the garage.
Typical.
The organizers had to scramble at the last possible second and replace it with a 1988 Lola LaRousse, which utilizes a V8 engine.
Look, it certainly sounds better than the muffled V6 hybrids we have today, but it completely lacks the aggressive scream of the promised V10.
The fans were incredibly disappointed, but the aftermath online was hilarious. A dedicated statistics account immediately highlighted the historical context.
This is the best part.
If the event organizers had spent 2 minutes doing a basic Wikipedia search on that 2001 Jaguar Cosworth, they would have seen its track record. During its actual competitive season in 2001, that chassis suffered 17 retirements out of 17 races.
Statistically speaking, the mechanical failure was not just a possibility, it was a near mathematical certainty.
They literally picked the worst car.
They selected arguably the most fundamentally unreliable piece of engineering in modern Formula One history to perform a high-profile showcase run, and were somehow caught off guard when the engine refused to fire.
So what does this all mean? It proves that Formula One is a sport governed by highly predictable data, even when the organizers completely ignore it. Which brings us perfectly to our final and frankly most meticulously investigated detail of the entire weekend. We have to discuss the Mercedes team.
Mercedes endured a highly complex weekend.
Very rough.
They had to deal with Kimi Antonelli crashing heavily in FP3, forcing the mechanics into a frantic rebuild before qualifying. But the most thoroughly analyzed impact Mercedes suffered didn't involve a carbon fiber chassis.
No, it did not.
It involved their team principal, Toto Wolff, and an electric scooter.
The raw footage of this incident is pure, unadulterated slapstick. Toto is riding a scooter through the paddock, navigating the crowds. He is quite tall, he appears slightly distracted, he has a massive grin on his face, and he drives directly under a low-hanging wooden pergola.
And boom.
He absolutely drills the top of his head into a solid wooden crossbeam.
It is a solid, audible impact. But what makes this notable is not the crash itself, but how our source material analyzed it. They applied the exact same level of obsessive, data-driven scrutiny to this comedic moment that a Formula One team applies to a front-wing actuator.
The dedication to the bit was phenomenal. The analyst took the raw video file of Toto hitting his head and dropped it into a professional video editing suite. Why? To calculate the precise reaction time of his central nervous system.
The methodology here is just fascinating. The video was recorded at a standard frame rate of 29.97 frames per second. At the exact moment Toto's skull makes physical contact with the wooden beam, the smile is still fully formed on his face.
The impact has happened, but he doesn't know it yet.
Right. The analyst then advanced the footage frame by frame. It took exactly 6 frames for the physical impact to register.
6 frames at 29.97 frames per second equates to exactly 20 milliseconds. We now have documented peer-reviewed data that Toto Wolff's pain response time is 20 milliseconds.
It's science.
The wood connects, 20 milliseconds elapse, the signal reaches his brain, the smile instantly vanishes, and then he immediately darts his eyes toward the nearest camera, realizing his moment of clumsiness has been immortalized forever.
It serves as the ultimate distillation of the modern Formula One panopticon.
So true.
Nothing escapes the lenses.
Yeah.
Every single element of the paddock is subjected to hypersurveillance. We analyze the kinetic energy of a flying hand, we reverse engineer the hidden aerodynamics of a crashed McLaren, and we calculate the micro-expressions of a team principal down to the millisecond.
The paddock is an environment where literally nothing can be hidden anymore.
Nothing.
When you take a step back, it really does encapsulate the sheer madness of the sport. The television broadcast sells you on the flawless execution, the pristine glamour, the cutting-edge technology. But the true essence of this deep dive demonstrates that it is ultimately a high-stakes, billion-dollar circus powered by incredibly fragile, highly fallible human beings.
And this raises an important question. It is the thought I want to leave you with today as we wrap up. We discussed the influencer in the Williams hospitality suite who had no idea who Carlos Sainz was.
The VIP disconnect.
As Formula One continues its aggressive push into global entertainment, chasing the VIP dollar and curating these sterilized, engagement-driven paddock experiences, a profound tension is building.
Absolutely.
Will this inevitable push to make the sport a sanitized, VIP-friendly event eventually force the governing bodies to sanitize the track danger and the raw, unpredictable emotion out of the racing entirely? It is a critical dynamic to watch as the 2026 regulations continue to evolve.
That is a brilliant point and definitely something to monitor. Are we trading the visceral grit of flying gravel and bleeding knuckles for the sterile comfort of the VIP lounge? It is a reality every dedicated fan will have to grapple with as we watch the rest of this season unfold. Thank you so much for joining us in the DRS zone for this deep dive today.
We always enjoy dissecting the unseen data with you.
Keep questioning the narrative, look beyond the glossy broadcast, and make sure to follow the DRS Zone on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube so you never miss an update. We will see you next time.